Woo! Yes.
Back.
You are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports is ordered. In America, we never sleep, because sleep is the cousin of death. Mr. Logical.
You're
2-5. We got some boxing for y'all tonight. Everybody out here playing Excuse Central for one Earl Spence, when we all know that he from Dallas and all they do is choke. Nah, I had to get that off. That off. I don't mean it. I like Earl Spence. I didn't mean it. I just
like
had
a
to
real
get that
Washington
off.
fan.
Yeah, I had to get that off. And then speaking of Washington, we're going to let you know why they're going to finish last place in the NFC East, much to my behest. So, Mr. Logical, great fight this weekend from the standpoint of names, but I feel sorry for those who was out there spending their hard-earned money on this.
Listen, I went to Vegas 2015 for the Pacquiao Mayweather fight. It's that fight in particular, like the prices everywhere is crazy. Like I said, it was like $175 for men to get in the club. You could pay like $250 to get into some of the MGM Grand Corporation. They own like multiple hotels like Treasure Island, MGM Grand, New York. Like a few of these hotels are under the same corporate umbrella. And you could pay money to get into like the bars and restaurants. It was like $250, maybe up to like $400 to watch that fight. We just watched it on pay-per-view. My boy's crib was stationed out in Vegas. But that fight was boring. The Pacquiao Mayweather fight was boring. Like, I mean, it wasn't like because Mayweather didn't do his thing. It just was like it didn't have the angst and the energy and the competitiveness.
Well, they fought like 3 or 4 years too late.
Even with that, like they should have been 3 or 4 years equally as entertaining.
You know, that was the last fight that I bought before I started my streaming escapades. Like literally, I bought the fight. I invited like 30 people over. Like 7 people showed up. You know, I went and bought like $400 worth of liquor. Bought pizza for everybody.
I flew to Arizona and drove from Arizona to Las Vegas. We met a dude on the interstate. I think it's like I-40 that goes from Arizona to Vegas. We were driving. This dude just looked over and saw us. He was like, "Y'all going to Vegas?" Like, yeah. He's like, and he gave us his business card while we were driving down the road. Like, he handed me his business card at the driver's side window. I grabbed it, and we hit him up like, "Yo, we watching the fight at my boy's crib." He was like, he was gonna watch the fight. This is crazy. In his hotel room in Vegas, because his boy back in like Texas or somebody was getting the fight, and they were gonna watch it. They were gonna put an iPad up on FaceTime. I'm like, why would you come all the way out to Vegas to watch the fight on your friend's TV, iPad, FaceTime situation? I just was like, man, just come to the crib, man. We had liquor, some chicken wings, but it was dreadfully boring.
Yeah, that was the last any pay-per-view I ever bought. Like ever since then, you know what I mean? It's streaming, or I mean, I got WWE Network, but that's only like $5 a month. You know what I mean? So anyway, so get it off my chest. It's that time of show, y'all. We're gonna talk about this. So look, I ain't never really done drugs before, but I am an addict. And the thing about being an addict is that we kick dead horses a lot. So I'm gonna get at George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, just one more again, because I've been talking about the Pac-12 for like the last 6 months. Expansion, TV deals that we still don't have. And last Friday during the Pac-12 media days, when we thought we were going to get the announcement of the TV deal, they asked him, how concerned are you about losing a team? And he said, "Oh, no, we're not concerned about that right now. It's not a threat." And then 3 days later, we got the reports that I did the 2-5 daily. Like, why don't the Big 12 and Colorado just get a room And then the next day it became official that they were joining the Big 12, right? So I was sitting there and I was looking at this. So what do you do now? Because I'm no TV exec, I'm no corporate shill, but what I do know is that if you have a chance to argue for Southern California to be a part of your TV package, you make that happen. So we've been hearing about San Diego State for about a year now. San Diego State sent their letter to the Mountain West a couple of weeks because they had to do it by June 30th. They sent this letter to the Mountain West on June 13th or whenever it was, saying like, hey, we want to leave. And then the Pac-12 announcement never came, and they was like, nah, just playing, just playing. We was just letting y'all know that we were thinking about it, but this ain't official. So why that was significant is because if they would have left before June 30th, the buyout would have been 17 million. Now that they crossed that date to join the Pac-12 next year, they would have to double that and pay 34 million. So Pac-12, it was like either invite them or you're probably going to have to pay some of that 34 million to get them into your conference if you want them next year. So let's just say you wait until 2025. You got SMU, Rice, and Tulane. You talk about murderer's row of shit. You know, these are the guys that are now being talked about joining the conference because Arizona may leave now and go to the Big 12. So for the AAC, these are the rules. You need a 27-month notice, and the buyout is only 10 million. So we should be hearing something right about now if the goal is for them to come in 2025. So you're potentially adding San Diego, you're potentially adding Dallas if you're adding SMU. You know, you're adding Houston if you add Rice, and then you're adding New Orleans if you add Tulane.
Big markets.
Why is that important? Because you lost Los Angeles and Denver in the last 13 months. You know, so you lost 2 top 16 markets. But here's the thing, right? Rice in the last 20 years, 5 winning seasons. Tulane, 4. That was mostly in Conference USA. You know what I mean? And not only that, SMU has 9, but come on. Like, what are we doing? SMU has a 40,000 or 38,000 seat stadium that they're only filling at 22,000 right now. Act like you want the job you're trying to get. Sell out your stadium. Pac-12, do better. If you knew better, you do better. But obviously, survey says you don't know shit.
Yeah, Mike is really focused on this. He's probably more focused than anybody I know on this conference alignment.
College football's my favorite.
I'm just, like I said, my college football alignment problem is like I think it should be regional. I think you just stick with your regions, stick with what you know, and play it out and ride it out.
I know you know Northwestern over in.
I don't like these Frankenstein-esque.
You know Northwestern over there outside of Chicago can't wait to take those trips to Seattle.
They better do something. They got to do something to galvanize the fan base. Yeah, so Pac-12, like, get it together. Mike said it. Just make it happen. Speaking of making things happen and getting things together, I want to give a shout out to boxing for once again ruining my faith in humanity and common sense and judgment. I watched the Cruz Cabrera fight. Cruz, undersized, 5'4". They call him Pitbull from 305 from Miami. Sky Cabrera is like 5'8.5". So that's pretty substantial in a fight, 4.5 inches. But every single round, other than the round where Cruz lost a point, and the reason he lost a point is because Cabrera kept getting warned. So it's a 12-round fight. I'm going to realistically say he got warned 18 to 20, 22 times about holding. It was minor. Like he would hold just enough to where it wasn't egregious, but it just was messing up the flow of the fight. Mm-hmm. You could tell it was a deliberate tactic to just hold this smaller guy, be the bigger guy, hold the smaller guy, and frustrate him and get him into some ticky-tack stuff, which Cruz fell for a couple of times. He used his head. He was like bouncing his head, and he was like leaning in because he was getting frustrated. But the ref, I'm like, listen, you should have already deducted a point from Cabrera because he literally was doing it on purpose. It wasn't like he was being hit and need to hold him to stop the barrage of punches. He would throw these awkward, weird punches and then just grab. So Cruz would, ball up because I'm the smaller target. You got to aim down here. So he would ball up and then he would just throw haymakers. Boom, boom, boom. He was rocking them. I'm not sure how much weight was behind it because the leverage with a guy that small throwing his punches that high, especially because Cabrera was standing up straight. He was like the whole time, never brought his hands up. Stylistically, just as a boxing match, he did not do. If he just would have done this, then I could give him a few rounds. But he had his hands down so much that Cruz was getting the clean shots every single round. Cabrera would punch the gloves, Cruz would stand like this, and he'd come out and he'd throw like 7, 10, 12 haymakers. And he'd land like 3 or 4 of them, and then he would jab and get inside. But he was landing the bigger punches. Cabrera was punching his gloves and not getting through the guard. He didn't go to the body at all. He would dip down as the bigger fighter. He would just dip down just to hold. Like it was ridiculous. It was like I'm not an experienced boxing trainer by any means, and I've done like a few classes throughout my life, and I watched boxing growing up. But if I'm in his corner, I'm like, listen, you are 5 inches taller than this guy. You probably walking into the ring, you probably outweighed him 6, 7 pounds maybe. Like, get on top of him and throw punches. He was throwing punches from the outside and then coming in, leaning in, like literally bending his whole body 90 degrees, grabbing dude around the waist, backing him into the corner, frustrating him. Then he would stand up and he would try to take the headbutt and make it seem like, oh my God, this guy's flailing his head at me. And Cruz is just coming out throwing bombs. He wasn't knocking him down. He was hitting him solid, but he was the only one making real power shots, landing. He was the only one really boxing. He was defending. He was going to the body. So then his corner was telling him, "You got to knock him out. You got to knock him out from like
Mm-hmm.
round 7 on. You got to knock him out. You got to knock him out." And this is the undercard to a unification championship bout that's going on. So it's like you are the co-main event. So Cabrera should have put on a better fight from just that standpoint alone. Like you're in the co-main event. The arena was almost packed for that fight.
Mm-hmm.
The first two fights they were pretty solid fights. The first one was a quick knockout. It was probably like 1,200 people in the arena. The second fight was probably like a third of the arena was full. By this fight, it was like people were trickling in just in case a knockout happens at the co-main event, and you're already in your seat for the main event. So this was a showcase opportunity, and like he didn't take advantage of it. He didn't put his hands up. So Cruz, his corner was telling him, "Listen, you gotta knock him out. You gotta knock him out," because you can tell his strategy was to simply look like he was busier and look like he was more effective and not be effective. Like Cruz didn't have a blemish on him. Like you're telling me you're this much bigger than your smaller fighter. He doesn't have a bruise on him, doesn't have a scratch on him. So the corner was telling him between I think it's like either the 10th or 11th round or 11th, 12th round, he was like, "You got to knock him out. You don't want to go just to go to the judges." And the commentators ringside, I think Al Bernstein was like, "We all think that Cruz is winning this fight, but we have seen some strange things in boxing." As everyone says that, like it doesn't need to be evaluated. It's like this comedian was talking about, don't go to that frat house. Rumor has it they put a lot of date rape drugs in their drinks. But it's like, so no one investigates it, like do anything about it, just don't go there. So like with boxing is like, oh yeah, boxing judging is terrible. Like we can't do anything about it. So 12th round comes Cabrera, who's feasibly down in this fight in my mind, and even in his mind, he should have thought he was down. He threw like 30 punches, and someone said, "Oh, is he the busier man this round?" And it was like he's throwing 30 punches in a round where we think he's losing the fight. I don't think that constitutes as busy. Like how proper boxing commentary is, but it's like
Yeah.
and I'm on a low, but it's like that's what I was thinking. I'm like, yo, you can't believe you're winning this fight. You haven't hit him clean. You haven't staggered the smaller guy in 33 minutes, and you guys just last 3 minutes you did nothing to do change the fight. So it goes to the decision. It's a split decision. So I sat up on my couch like, are you fucking kidding me? Split like who? What fight did they watch? Because I watched it from my crib in Jersey. They were in Nevada ringside commentating. Uh, like I'm listening to the fan reaction. I'm like, what? What were they think? And then the scores were it was 115, 114. Then I think it was for Carrera, And then I think the other two were like 115, 114 for Cruz. I'm like, who judged this fight? It was easily 117, 111, even with the point deduction. And this was like, so, and then Cabrera, when he had his hand up thinking he won, I was like, what made you think you won? You did not even stagger the smaller guy, and he was rocking you all fight.
He was on that
So,
shit Haney was on. I was I didn't catch that fight. Like I was telling you, like I was reading the updates because I was at the bar watching UFC. So I was just looking at the CBS round by round. And just from me reading the round by round, I came away 117, 111, just from what I was reading. Like everything that I've read was like Cruz hits him with shot that rocks him, and
rocked them.
Cabrera needs to be more active, or like it was in there. So
It was like, I don't like Twitter or whatever, like these apps, but whatever you were reading, X, it was precise. It was Cruz was hitting them with the bombs. Cabrera literally, he had his, like, why do you have your hands like they were at his waist? They were like between his ribs and his waist the whole fight.
Yeah, like
And even
I saw a picture, and it looked like when you get knocked down and the ref have you put your gloves up and he grabs your gloves. That's what it looked like.
the whole fight, and even ringside, they were like, "Yo, you're getting hit with this many left hands," and we get it. It's not. He didn't fall, but it's like you would think he would put his hands up by now. They said that every round, from the fourth round to the post fight interview, it was literally, you think he would put his hands up. You think he would put
So
his
what you're
hands
saying is that he didn't make any adjustments.
Boxing needs to, the fighter, whatever the adjustments the fighter's going to do, the fighter's going to do. Boxing really needs to evaluate, do we have the most appropriate system in place? Do we need a fourth and fifth secret judge in different parts of the arena watching on a monitor to keep the three judges honest? Because like like I said, what you were reading from your bar in Texas and what I was seeing on TV, that matched up. So how is it that what you were reading on social media and what I was watching, that matched up, but when we got the scores, it was completely different than what I was seeing and what you were reading? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
I get people have different opinion of like with a movie and everything else, but it's like, if you're watching a football game at a bar and somebody kicks a field goal and they get 3 points, and you're reading about it on getting updates, and I'm watching on TV, then when the score comes on the screen, it should say 3-0 because this team just kicked the field goal in the first drive of the game. It shouldn't be a touchdown. Like, yo, how did we get to that? Like, what did you see? And that's essentially what it was. It was like, what you guys scored did not match up to what everyone was saying ringside and what I was seeing from my house and what you were reading on social media. So it's just the fact that it continues to happen in big fights. It just, it it just overwhelms me with the lack of like just progressive initiative that this sport's taking, on top of other things we'll talk about later as far as like boxing. It's just, get your shit straight, because it's like, it's gonna be hard to watch if this ruins a big fight, like another big fight, because boxing seems to be getting a little momentum. You can't have this stuff ruin big fights.
Yeah, speaking of big fights, woo, woo. As I was telling you, you know, Terrence Crawford let go of the missiles, and he was laying something on Mr. Spence. So, like all I've been hearing about. So I learned a valuable lesson that I should have known already. Whenever you go take your WAPS test for promotion in the military, they always tell you don't change your answer, like just follow your gut. And so Friday night, I was going back and forth like for the last 2 years. When this fight became a possibility, I was like Spence all day. You know what I mean? And then like 6 months ago, I was like, nah, man, like Crawford is just the better boxer, XYZ. So Friday night, I was sitting up there and I was talking to my boy, shout out Kerry Doja, my big man, 6'7" amateur boxer in the past. We were talking. So he teaches me a lot about the sport, you know. So um, we were talking, and I was just like, "Yo, Bud TKO in 10," and he gave me emphatic, like, "Fuck no." And I was like, I could just feel it through the phone, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I was like, okay, Spence might be a little too busy, you know, like whatever. So when I got on Facebook, somebody, you know, who's gonna win? And I was like, Spence in 10. But then when I woke up Saturday, called my guys up, yo, let's go to Buffalo Wild Wings. I was like, yo, Crawford gonna win this in like 8 or 9. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, but anyway, your thoughts?
Uh, I think about, and I've said this before many times. I don't even know if Mike Tyson actually said this, but
He
I'm just
said
going.
it.
He said everybody got a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
He said it.
I don't know if I ever read it. I think it's just word of mouth. Like somebody said it to me, and I'm like, that sounds like something Mike Tyson would say, and it makes the most sense. We've seen it happen most recently. Uh, we could say Deontay Wilder, the second Fury Wilder fight. I think Wilder felt like, oh, he knocked him out in the first fight, so he probably was like, you know what, I don't really have to switch up anything. I remember Coach Popovich said something about like, sometimes you rather lose a close game to force people to make adjustments so the next game isn't close. Well, having that draw, I think he came into the second fight thinking like, oh, I'm gonna just do the same thing. I think Fury made some adjustments. I think Fury kept the weight on. I know Wilder dropped some weight, and Fury kept the weight on. So he's like, I'm just gonna lean on him because I'm just that much bigger. So he just leaned on him all fight. Davis Garcia. Garcia kept his head up pretty high, and Davis caught him with a left. Garcia was doing. He looked confident until Tank dropped him with that left hand. I think Spence was in that same boat. I mean, you got to have all the confidence in the world to overcome what he overcame with the accident. Um, his boxing career, being undefeated, being able to have this many belts and this many championships and beat this many people, this
Yo,
much top
better
people.
better driver, Earl Spence or Holly Berry?
Khloe Kardashian. So like to overcome, like I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of resilience. So you get in the ring, and Bud just hit him with it was like a short jab. I didn't even see it. Like I watched it, my TV downstairs, like 50 something inches, pretty big TV. I was like, I didn't see him get hit by it. But what I saw in his face was, oh, I got hit by a jab and it put me down. I don't think that's even probably in a sparring session, probably never happened to him where he got hit by a jab by a guy he's comparable to in size, and it puts him down that aggressively. He didn't like he just like boom, flat down. He looked up, and where's a Ha Ha Davis? Oh, y'all boxing. So when he stood up, and then the round, shortly ended after that, I just felt like Crawford knew then that, oh, this element that I implemented in training camp is going to work. This jab, I'm gonna catch him with it every time. And then they kept screaming out his percentage. They were like, Bud Crawford was landing 58% of his power shots throughout the fight. Every round they just kept saying it. 58, he's landing at 58% clip. Like the accuracy, like no one lands at a 58% rate in this level of fight. And he just kept walking him down, walking him down, walking him down. And then Spence had to switch up what he was doing, and he was backing up. But Crawford didn't rush him. He was like, I got him on the ropes, metaphorically, because he had him in the Marines. Like, I got him on the ropes. So I'm just gonna walk him down. And he's like, he'd walk him down for the first minute of the round, and then he'd get in there, and like the last 90 seconds, he just was hitting him with bombs. Every round from the time he knocked him down. When he came back out for the third round and Spence didn't have an answer, I think by the start of the fourth round, I just was thinking like, when is this fight gonna end? I figured it was gonna be a knockout. I didn't know when it was gonna be a knockout, but after he knocked him down in the second and then he dominated him in the third, I was like, okay, this fight's going to end with the Crawford victory, because normally people like overdo it. and they want to rush in. He was a southpaw. He just wants to rush in and end the fight. He was like, I'm just gonna keep. He kept body shots. He was getting them with the hook. He was counter punching. He was
He was trying to prove a point. You know what I mean? Like I think he was just trying to prove like we are not the same. Is basically what he was trying to get at. And so I've been waiting for this for years. This is what Pusha T was talking about when he said surgical summer. This was it. Like Bud was performing surgery in there because, like I told you, and I've told like many people about this fight. The reason why I thought Spence would give Bud trouble at first is the same reason that he lost this fight. Is because he's so busy, he's so relentless in pursuit. He just doesn't give you a chance to breathe. Like he'll jab you double jab, come towards you, and before you can even like plant your foot and throw a jab back, he's usually right on top of you, bearing down on you, and you don't even have the space to get off an effective jab normally. So that's where I thought, Bud, I was telling you, in some ways, he reminds me in his last, I'd say, 6 or 7 fights. He kind of reminds me of Canelo in that way, where like the first 4 to 5 rounds, he's feeling you out, just watching, trying to get your timing down. What's his pattern? Like,
That's
like,
what
like,
they said Bud normally starts slow, and I'm like, I don't.
yeah.
A slow start. I think it's a methodical
Well,
start.
I learned that, like playing basketball. As I got older and slower, I had to start guarding the dudes that was 6'1", 6'2". So you know what I mean. So like I would have to get under them. So I would have so whenever they were going up for like a little jump shot or like a little floater, I had that like 1, 2, raise your arm. Like but I had to like figure out their rhythm because a lot of dudes today don't switch it up. Like they just have something that works and they just keep doing it. So that's how I had 1, 2 step, arm up. So he never gave Bud another look to be like, oh, I didn't see that coming, or oh, he's doing that now.
Because his face said what I want to do isn't going to work.
And that's why, like, I brought up Pacquiao when we were talking offline. I brought up Pacquiao because Pacquiao would come at you from different angles. So you couldn't necessarily just stand there and pick him off because he would just switch it up on you in the middle of a flurry. Like he might throw 2 punches at you, then step to the side and throw like a punch off his back leg or something weird that you don't even do on Madden. So he just came at you in that way. Spence was just on Bud, but then it came to the point where those missiles started dropping, and Spence took this man through more dimensions than Doctor Strange took America. Like literally, he was like, "Oh, this is what you want to do? I'm gonna lean up on the rope and just pop off." Like, "Oh, you want to go to the middle? There, come towards me. I'm not even going to back up. I'm just gonna pop you." Like, hey, you want to turn sideways now instead of coming at me at an angle? You're just going to turn your body, but not
Yo,
actually
Spence was standing right in front of
right
him.
in front of him.
His corner was like, "Listen, you're standing right in front of him. You think you're moving, but you're not. You're
He
literally
didn't.
standing right in front of him." Because once he got hit, like I said, it's the same thing with Garcia. Once he caught that shot, I mean, Garcia's been down before. He got snuck by the
Right.
guy, whatever. He's been down and he got back up. But I think when she realized, like, oh, this guy hit me with one shot. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of shot before, and I'm down. And and Crawford didn't overexert himself. Excuse me. he didn't he didn't chase. Sometimes you see a guy and you got him rocked, and the guy with the advantage like chases him around the ring, like
Right.
aggressively gets. He's like, listen, this is a boxing match. The guy has to come to me in order to do anything. In order to do anything, like you can't do anything from all the way over there. So why am I going to chase you around the ring that aggressively when I can just stick to my strategy of moving in? And he said in the post fight interview in the ring that his camp, they worked on, like I said, the verbiage, right? A heavy jab. He's like, instead of flicking a jab at him, he was like, because Spencer's too quick for that, he's too smart for that, he would counter the flick. He was like, we just worked on a heavy jab. Just like, if you're gonna throw the jab, like you
Mean it.
basically mean it, like throw it the same way you would throw a hook, the same way you would throw a cross. Just
Hmm.
throw the jab out there and really sticking with it because, like you said, he's so relentless because he works his way in with the jab. But if he's working his way in with his jab, and I'm coming back with a deliberate, like, listen, you coming in with this jab, and you're being relentless. I'm gonna hit you with this heavy one. And when I think when he caught him with that, and he dropped, and then in the post fight interview he had with Stephen A. Smith, he said that Earl caught him in like the third round. He said he caught me clean, and he said, this is Bud Crawford talking. He's like, I remember thinking, is this it? But by then he had already put Spence down, and then he had basically surgically kind of just broken him down in that third round. So by the time that haymaker came, Crawford was probably already thinking like, "Oh, I got this fight won."
Right.
And then after he gets that, he gets that little hook, he was like, "Oh, I definitely got this one." That's why he never. You can see him never panic. He kept his guard. Like it just was so methodical and just like it was like reminiscent of his interview that he had with Jim Gray in the locker room when he was taping his hands up. And he just was very calm. I saw a clip today where he did a pre-fight interview on the Breakfast Club, and Charlemagne said, "I think Spence is going to get you," and he didn't go over the top to argue with Charlemagne. He was like, "So, what? Tell me what you. Why do you think he's going to beat me?" And Charlemagne was like, "I mean, just and then Envy, of course, Envy was like stoking the flames, like, yo, was saying, talk your talk. He was like, listen, I think he the bigger man. I think this. He was like, okay, okay. And he said, and Spence says something like, no, not Spence, but Crawford says
Crawford.
something like, he says something like it was like maniacal and cool, like, something like, would you fight me, or what makes you think that I'm not? What makes you think I'm not a killer too, or something along those lines, like.
Yeah.
And it was like it was very calm. It was like a movie character calm.
Well, his knockouts are very violent. You know what I mean? Like his last knockout, like it was literally like clean up on all four. And so like I don't know why you would underestimate him in that way. Like if Spence was going to win, like I said, to me, it was just going to be the relentless style of not letting Bud have that time, as they say. Max Kellerman likes to say to download Spence. Like he wasn't going to have time to download him, but
He just was he was
Spence
coming
didn't give
over
him a
the
need
top.
to.
He
Yeah,
was every time he was close, like that final flurry that ended the fight. I remember just watching how clean. Normally, like we think about it, was it?
it looked like when Tommy the Hitman beat up Martin.
Yeah, I know. I saw the memes. I was trying to avoid that, but when like Danny Garcia fought Amir Khan, and he rocked Amir Khan, and then Danny Garcia just started throwing those haymakers. Just you could tell it was like exhausting himself to throw these haymakers. He could have just been like, you know what? I got you rocked. You felt the power. Now I'm gonna continue to break you down 80%. Now you're at 70%. Now you're not recovering. Like the boxing ticker on like fight night. Like I'm just gonna keep making you go to your corner round after round after I beat you for 3 minutes.
Demoralized.
I'm just gonna beat you to the point where your corner was like his corner was telling him, you can't stand in front of him. You gotta move. So
Mhm.
when he was moving, Crawford just was walking him down. So he goes back to his corner. He's like, listen, you gotta connect, you gotta, make something happen. The commentators like, listen, Spence is looking for that one punch that can change the tone of the fight. But Crawford was never going to give it to him because he's like, why should I change up what I've done for the first 3, 4, 5 rounds? Like I've been methodical.
You
I've
haven't
been
given me a reason
deliberate.
to.
I don't need to chase you down because I know when you get over here, I'm a great counterpuncher. And he was hitting them. He was a lot of body shots. His eyes were swollen shut. It was a lot of blood. So it just was like all of this stuff that was happening to him physically had never happened to him in the ring before at this level.
Mhm.
Maybe as a young amateur, maybe sparring in a session when he was like 14 or 15, but at his current age and his prime of his career, I don't think he's ever been in a situation where the other person across from him made him feel the way his body was feeling because it had
Well,
because all the swelling and all that, like even that was brand new. That's brand new territory.
like
And
I
to
was
learn
telling
on the
you,
fly,
one thing that concerned me was Spence's last fight against Ugas. Is because Ugas isn't necessarily what you would consider to be a hard hitter. And there was a round within that fight where I thought Spence was out on his feet. Where Ugas just hit him with one of those shots. Not that he could have knocked him out, but he was dazed. Where it was like the round ended like 30 seconds after that hit, and it was like, all right, now we gotta fight. Like now Spence can cover, recuperate, and now he's gonna come back out. But then he came out that next round, and Ugas was still dotting him. He just didn't have the power to finish it. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Spence ended up winning, but then I was just like, yo, what you just said, I was like, yo, I've never seen Spence look like that before, like ever. So that's where, like, for me, where I said like 6 months ago is when I started to be like, maybe Bud can win this thing, because I thought back to that fight. And and I have this theory, like, it doesn't always work, obviously, but they always say, like, when you see your own blood, it goes one or two ways. Like, you either snap
you
or
get enraged or you get fear.
yeah. So that was my question for Spence. Like, when he got rocked by Ugas, it wasn't enough to knock him out or anything. But I was like, how does he react to this? Like, is this a confidence breaker where he's like, that never happened before? Or is he like, I need to tighten it up, and maybe I took this dude lightly, or whatever. And so I don't know if one has to do with the other, but that was just my thought coming into the fight.
Yeah, but
So
it'd be too late to try to adjust because like I like I don't mind a one-sided fight because I think it's contrary for the health factor because I'm like for every knockout and all the entertainment and the YouTube clips, there's like men and women who get seriously hurt in these
mhm.
fights. So like the last thing I would want was like, oh, you should just let him go. He's a champ. He should die on the shield. Nah, this is a boxing match. He should go out,
Well, he
and
damn sure would have.
if it gets to the point where he's not going to make it, then the ref has to step in.
The refs definitely stopped it, I believe, at the right time. I know there
The
was some talk on social
perfect
media.
time. It
Yeah,
was the perfect time
there was some talk
because
on social media where people
it should have
thought
been
he should have
two
ended it.
rounds earlier.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Because I don't because like that's the thing. Spence Crawford was hitting them with timely boxing shots.
Right. He wasn't
He
just hitting
wasn't
with
hitting them.
Tyson.
He wasn't hitting them with barrages of
Right.
shots and like the
Right.
ropes is holding them up. He was just hitting them with timely counter punches that were just very effective.
Well,
But
it's like being a
that
quarterback, the one that you don't see, like, or like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, so
you get blindsided and like, oh,
it was a couple of punches when you saw him in slow motion, like Bud threw like a hook over the top of Spence, and they were like as close as I'm in like this mic, like it's like they were in a phone booth. He hit him with something. He just came over the top and came straight. It just was like it was a weird angle, but you can tell it was deliberate. Like he had worked on getting his hand here and like coming over. I don't know if it was a right hand or left hand, but it came right over the top of his arm and connected. But that last barrage was just when he hit him with the one. I think he hit him with a right hook, and like when he hit him with the right hook, and Spencer's kind of like did this. He was like standing up straight, like after he caught the hook, and then he came in a couple more, and then the ref swooped in and stopped the fight. They asked Crawford, and he's like, "Did you think it was a good reason to stop the fight?" He was like, "Yeah," because he's like, "I was ready to start hitting him with a lot of heavy shots." He was like, "I was ready to start really teeing off because when he hit him flat footed, and he was like this."
yeah.
And he got a couple more shots in, and the ref jumped in, and like I said, I think it was perfect timing because other than that, he would have gone down again, and the ref would have stopped the fight anyway. He would have stopped the fight. He wouldn't have done an 8 count. Like if he would have
So
gone down again, he was going to stop the fight anyway.
so what now? Rematch?
You do the rematch. You do the rematch because two reasons. Me being mythological, I want boxing to be more entertaining. It's July 31st, about to roll into August 1st. Spence said he wants to do the fight again at 154 in August. Granted, this was like in the ring post-fight interview, he's still sweating blood on his face, whatever. He was like, I want to do it. He was like, they asked him if he wanted to exercise the rematch clause. He's like, oh yeah. I want to do it in December at 154. I don't know about the weight. I'm like, they have to figure that part out.
Well,
But I
the,
think
the
doing it
clause
again
in
in
the
December,
contract. Well, the clause in the contract was the winner gets to pick the weight.
winner gets to pick the weight, loser gets to enact the clause.
Right, right.
So I don't know who it behooves who works out for better, Bud or Spence. I looked up their walking around weight while I was watching the fight. They said Crawford walks around at 177 and Spence walks around like 165 to 168. Probably close to 170. So it's not that far off. So I just feel like Bud at 154 is probably just as effective against Spence at 154 as he was at 147. Because if he can get down to 147 and still have that strength, I imagine that getting down to 154, I don't know if that extra 7 pounds slows him down, or maybe the extra 7 pounds just works better for Spence because he doesn't have to cut that additional. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't cut down to 147 as easily as Bud. But I think you do the rematch for the sake of just getting the rematch out of the way, the belts, put the belts back on the line. You do the rematch for the entertainment purposes because we all know what happens in these boxing scenarios where we, the fans, and the potentially the boxers want to make the fight and it doesn't happen. And then this guy, he goes on and fights someone else. Spence say he fights, I don't know, Ryan Garcia wants to come up to 147 or whatever, and they want to fight because that's just good for.
Well, if I could see
and
Spence,
Garcia beats him,
I
and that's
could
like,
see
now
Spence.
what's the point of Crawford fighting Spence afterwards? I'm not saying that will happen, but
Right. It's a possibility.
With Joshua, like we were talking about it. I had a conversation with the guy before I deployed in 2018 about Joshua Wilder. That was 5.5 years ago. Joshua loses to Ruiz, then that just throws off the whole track. And then Wilder fights Tyson Fury at the end of 2018 and then loses the second time. Then he loses the second fight to Fury. Then he loses the other one to Fury. And now Fury is just fighting like random people because it's like Fury, Joshua. I don't know if that resonates with the boxing committees, not necessarily the fans. I think the fans will love it. Wilder, Joshua, I don't know what belt's on the line if either one of them has one, so I don't know how that appeals to the boxing committee. I know as a boxing fan, I'd want to see it. The Bronze Bomber with Joshua. Joshua's like a good dude. He's very
especially all the trash they were talking
dude.
between each other,
and all the trash talk is like you got a 6'7" guy, 6'6" guy. Like we need the heavyweights. I love these welterweight fights and these catchweight, bantamweight fights, these lightweight fights, like welterweight. All these fights are dope. But nothing beats like I said, I'm not a big boxing fan, but Holyfield, Riddick Bowe, like even Buster Douglas, Tyson Holyfield, Lennox. I mean, like these fights are legendary. We still talk about, like when Mike Tyson was knocking the dude out and was trying to help him up off the ropes. I mean, it just was like chaos. Even James Toney moved up to heavyweight when Roy Jones is moving up and getting knocked out. It's like we love these fights. These are memorable fights. I'm not saying we didn't remember Pernell Whitaker fights and the Belgic Taylor fights and Julio Chavez fights and De La Hoya and all these other guys. They had memorable fights too, and Mayweather. But it's like Mayweather didn't have any contemporaries. The heavyweights seem to have more guys that can fight at a heavyweight, and they make the least amount of fights. So Spence, Crawford, 2 December, make it happen. In between all the football chaos, hell, do it at goddamn Dallas Stadium. The house that Jerry built.
So if I remember correctly, for Bud, besides the rematch, Boots Ennis would be.
I don't know who that is, so I don't even want that fight.
Hold on. I'm about to tell you who he is. He would be the mandatory. This is why this is important because I gotta get my stat off. Gotta get my stat off.
You fire up the stat, I'm gonna rip this paper up and throw it. I don't give a hell about none of that.
So this stat comes from Lyle Fitzsimmons at Bleacher Report. So Boots Ennis is he's 31-0 with 28 knockouts. First of all, he doesn't really have the name on his resume yet that pops or stands out.
Yeah, keep in
You,
mind these
you know,
guys fight
you,
like 18 powder puff fights, 18 to
but hold
20
on,
fights
hold
are
on, hold
powder puff.
on. I got you. Hold
All
on.
right, all right, my
And
bad.
in his last fight, it was his 20th knockout in his last 21 fights. And in this streak of these fights, it only took 58 rounds to get there. So an average of 2.9 rounds per fight. So,
He doesn't get to fight Crawford.
but anyway, so you got that option. He could go to 154 and fight Jermell Charlo, provided Canelo doesn't rearrange his face in September.
So Jermell Charlo, or it's like Jamal, right?
Yeah, there's Jermell and Jamal. Yes. So Jermell
Okay.
is the one fighting Canelo.
And then
So Bud could fight him.
Jamal is the one that just had the altercation with Caleb Plant, like
Correct.
over the weekend.
Yes.
And Caleb Plant, what is he fighting at? Is he a 150?
I believe he's a little heavier because I can't. I gotta look it up.
Who did he fight? I'll look it up while you keep going.
But yeah. So Tim Zhu, spelling like Costa Zhu, is the next WBO challenger. He's the next mandatory challenger, and he's an interim title. So he would theoretically be next up for Jamel. So even if Bud were to take that route, we're probably a year out. So, from that, if it were to happen. So rematch makes sense to me. I'm sure just the way boxing works and the way people do these things, and you just alluded to it yourself, Spence's people might want him to fight somebody else in between. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense though.
I know, but that's just how it works usually. So I don't know if you look at it. I don't know if you look at somebody like a Keith Thurman, maybe.
If I'm okay, you're the promoter for your Spence's promoter.
Uh-huh.
I am Crawford. I represent Crawford. What is the benefit of Spence fighting anybody before the rematch?
The only benefit I could come up with, the only thing I could come up with, and this is where you get into like the sports psychology, you would have to know your fighter, all that good stuff. So I would say something along the lines of maybe he just needs some more confidence again. Like maybe that fight because people, I mean, of course there's like people talking and like we get ridiculous and overreact. We overreact. So people are saying like, hey, he should consider retirement and like all that. I'm not going there. But
lose one fight to a guy that's kind of strong.
Who might be the boxer of this generation?
You dudes from Omaha, Nebraska, all they do is fight.
You know what I'm saying?
They got much else going on. I say fight Crawford because I don't think you're gonna get any confidence unless you fight a guy that's bigger than Crawford and you beat him.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that guy, like maybe you meet Caleb Plant, because Caleb Plant is his super middleweight at 160 to 168. You get him to meet you at 154, and then maybe you fight a bigger guy that comes down to 154, and you go up to 154, and maybe you win that fight. Maybe that gets you confidence. But I think you're running the risk of boxing making Crawford now fight somebody else.
And it still doesn't matter if Crawford comes back and says, like, yeah, we're staying at 147.
So it's like, I think the best case scenario is to just get back on that bike you fell off of and go back out there and fight him again. Because if the goal is to fight him again, Crawford isn't going to get worse at his skill set. He's 40-0, 31 knockouts. The last 11 fights have been knockouts. So the likelihood that you fight some cupcake in January and then fight him again and fight a rematch in June, I doubt Crawford's going to get worse between July 2023 and May, June, Cinco de Mayo 2024. So you're better off just get back in there, get ready, get back in the lab. Because instead of making adjustments for a whole new fighter and then winning, maybe losing, maybe going the distance, and you don't look as good to the public now. So now it's like, oh, he fought, some guy, and it's supposed to be a cupcake, and it goes 12 rounds. And it's like, now you want to fight Crawford again, and the public doesn't buy it. People are ready to buy, literally financially buy the rematch because they're like, there's no way it could happen twice. That's what
Yeah.
people are gonna say.
They're
Like
breaking
you
out the
saw the fight,
excuses. They still
you
talking
saw
about
the
the car
fight.
accident.
His skin looked dry, his mouth looked dry, his eyes. I read a report. Somebody said his eyes looked dry, his skin looked dry. He looked disoriented. I'm like, then why didn't you call a fight before you went in there with a dude who was getting paid millions of dollars to punch him in the face? If I got a guy, if you told me you didn't feel like doing the podcast, I'm like, we'll just do it tomorrow. If you're not feeling well enough to sit here and talk, then
Right.
like, okay, we'll take a break. If this guy really wasn't feeling up to the challenge of fighting Crawford, then you call it.
Yeah,
You
but
call
you
it for
know
injury.
that. But you know that he's
It's
not
not
going to
going to
say
happen.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's not going to say that. Like even if he loses, he still got the payday. So you know what I mean. Like you're not trying to give that up. So and there's a lot of obviously logistics go into all this.
I just say save the excuses. This era of social media, people like to put their problems out there with this expectation to get some sympathy out of it. I'm like, I'm not giving you any sympathy, dog. Like, you lost your fight. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you are a competitor and you went out there and you put your body on the line for the sake of these belts and then subsequently the sake of public entertainment. So I'm not going to tell you like, oh, you fucked up, you're a bum, whatever the case may be. But if you have a real problem, that's not for me to know.
right.
That's like because Ryan Garcia said the same
Write a
thing
book
about
about it
cancer.
10 years from now.
Just go in your lab. Go to the people who can help you with that. Go to the people who can
Like
help
who was it? Was
rehydrate.
it
Go
Pacquiao
to the
talking
people,
about the
the
torn shoulder?
shoulder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like tell me that 10 years later in a book.
well, both of your shoulders were torn. And you weren't hitting them with either hand. You were hitting the rope. So like you didn't do shit the whole fight. So I don't care about your shoulder. I get it. You're injured. Whatever. Don't overdo it in a training camp. I mean, like people go like you sign these contracts. Don't hurt yourself training. I told my son he works out in the gym for the football team. I'm like, there's nothing worse than getting hurt in the locker room before the season starts.
Yeah, who
Don't be
was
there
it?
trying to deadlift 400 pounds. Like for what? Like
It was a
go to the
dude on the
season.
T Wolves. McDaniels like punching the fucking wall and broke his hand right before the
Punch the
play
wall
in.
right before the play-in. Like you don't have a Jalen Brown contract in the waiting. Like you can't just be out here ruining the thing you need to play basketball. Ankles and hands, knees, ankles, hands. You can play with a mask on
You know what I'm
and be
saying?
good
Head,
to go.
shoulders, knees, and toes. You know what I'm saying?
You need all of that to be a successful 3-and-D guy. But yeah, so like I said, I don't like everybody coming out with excuses because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because like he doesn't look the same. He looked
you,
the same in the first round.
you know what the
He
worst
didn't get knocked
excuse?
down in the first round.
You know what the worst excuse I've ever heard is
In regards to this, or just in general,
in general.
let's hear it.
We'd have won the Super Bowl if
We
it
both
wasn't for
just
the field.
wasn't for the turf.
If
I
it
mean, we had,
wasn't for the turf.
oh my god, yo, shout
So
out to CJ Gardner. Like I hope he's healthy. I know he got injured Dallas in Detroit practice a few days ago. So hopefully he's injured. But like, yo, y'all got to stay off Twitter or X or MySpace or Yelp,
all of it.
whatever you guys are typing your opinions and your
Get
feelings
off
on.
Reddit.
Go talk to a shrink. Just talk to a chaplain. Talk to somebody who doesn't legally have to share the information and get it off your chest in their office. Because when you guys go to Twitter, you sound ridiculous. The turf complaint for the Super Bowl is by far the absolute worst because the boy Sky was wide open. Sky Moore was wide open because
Same
you guys
play.
he if you watch quarterback, I'm not giving away anything, but literally Patrick Mahomes is in the shotgun and he goes, "It's cover zero." So he knew exactly it was cover zero. That's man to man across the board, no safety help. They're sending a couple of people. So he put Sky Moore in motion and then zagged him back out, and he was wide open. And that was the second touchdown of that same kind of play. And the first one was Kadarius Tony because they were in the same thing, cover zero.
Who's
Somebody
also
goes
hurt
in,
again.
yeah, my man stay hurt. He can't grow eyebrows and he can't stay healthy. I don't know what's going on with him. Uh,
So yo, tell
So,
everybody how top 10 Daniel Jones is gonna win this division.
uh, like I know, like when you look at it, like I said, when you look at it in a vacuum, my thing is this: when you have success as a quarterback, and then they pay you money, a mistake he got away with in week one last year, he can't do this year.
Yeah.
So if they go now, let me pull up their schedule real quick because I think their week one game. What we got? That's the Falcons schedule. Go back. All right, so the Giants' week one game is against. So they got the week one game against Dallas
Mm-hmm.
at home, and then week two is at Arizona. If he doesn't make the plays, like if he as an individual, not the team, I don't need a strip sack. I don't need Thibodeau just to have a 2.5 sack game and they're just a terrorist on behind the line of scrimmage. If Daniel Jones isn't the guy making the plays that says his play is the reason why the Giants won, he's not going to get a lot of confidence from people outside the media, the sports pundits, maybe within the locker room. But if they're out here winning games 20-17 and he's out here still doing, the reason I said he was top 10 last year is because I think the quarterback, I won't say the quarterback play dropped off. I just thought that what he did as a dual threat, which is not a term you use with white quarterbacks a lot, what he did as a dual threat quarterback was substantial. 700 something yards rushing, 7 touchdowns, 15 passing touchdowns. Granted, he didn't pass for a lot of yards, but that's still pretty, that's 22 total touchdowns, and his team made the playoffs. But when they gave you $40 million and then they barely gave Saquon $10.2 million, you can't just give it to him 30 times a game and hope that that's the thing that's going to get you up the hump. You're gonna have to have a week two, a week three game where you throw for 322 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, maybe
Yeah,
run for another
that's what I
60.
wrote down in my
You
notes. Like maybe
you
the
got to
goal is
have a couple of those games.
maybe this season he could throw for 20 touchdowns and 220 yards in 9 games, and that would be progress.
So $2 million a touchdown.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
That sounds outrageous, but
but it's the truth.
that's the state of the NFL contract. I don't know if they should have. I don't know why they gave him that money. That's neither here nor there. Um, but I don't. I have them going. I got them 10-7. Uh, Simply because I think Washington's gonna give them 2 wins. Um, I think the defense is pretty solid. Brian Dable, if you think back his years with Josh Allen, his second year with Josh Allen was a big step, but he also had Stephon Diggs. So it was a lot more in play. There was no Tom Brady in division. So they had other things. And then Josh Allen is a talent. Like he's a tank. If you think about, like I said, think about the tallest person you know personally. Josh Allen is 6'5", 240. Now think about your friends that you know that are tall.
Right.
Any of them that big and move like that. Like I said, I got a few friends that are 6'5", 6'6", 6'4". None of them move like Josh Allen. So it's a pretty like unique skill set. Daniel Jones kind of has that same body type. So like I said, I like the Giants. I think they play great defense. I just don't know if the money is gonna be a distraction if they start out, you know,
3-3.
3-3, or they're 1-2 after San Francisco, or even potentially up to 1-4 at Miami, 1-6, 1-5 at the Buffalo. That's realistically that could be the case. You got, if San Francisco can really figure it out, I'm not sure they can, but it's on the Thursday, so it's a short week. But you're playing in Dallas, so you're at home for Dallas, then you're at Arizona, and then you're at San Francisco. So you won't go home between Arizona and San Francisco. It's on Prime Video Thursday. San Francisco, if they don't have the quarterback situation really figured out, if Brock Purdy is their guy, like I just don't know. I have no idea what they're doing with their quarterback situation.
But
So if
is their
that's
defense good enough to sneak that one?
I think so. If San Francisco doesn't have the quarterback situation figured out,
Mm-hmm.
then I think the Giants can go in San Francisco on a Thursday and steal one. Because let me pull up San Francisco's
Well,
dang
like
their
for
week 2 game
me,
real quick. I'm listening. Keep going.
so, yeah. So for me, I like a lot of what the Giants did this offseason. I do like the Waller pickup, even though, like I ain't necessarily like them taking him away from his wife and everything, but but it was a nice pickup. They got Jalen Hyatt in the draft, has the potential to be still in the draft. Um, they lost Richie James to Kansas City, but they did gain Paris Campbell from Indianapolis, who I do like. A little injury prone, but I like him. And they got Jamison Crowder as your vet receiver. In case something does happen with Saquon, because he's been known to miss a game or two, they did pick up James Robinson, and they have Eric Gray out of Oklahoma. So I like what they did there. Where I part a little bit is I don't like the loss of Julian Love, at the safety position, 124 tackles gone, and also they were last in the league in forcing interceptions. So, that's not necessarily a good sign. I mean, they
And
get the pressure.
they didn't really bolster their defensive line either. Because the
Right.
defensive line is how you get interceptions. People think it's
Right.
the cornerback play. It's not. It's the fact that the defensive line makes quarterbacks throw the ball half a
Quicker.
second
Yeah.
or a second early
Right.
consistently
So
gives
that's
your
what I
corner
don't
an
like.
opportunity.
So for everything that I do like as far as those receivers, it's just dependent on Ken Daniel Jones get them the ball effectively and get them the ball in stride, all that stuff like that. I think he's
Is he
actually
gonna
an
take these
underrated.
deep shots?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think he's an underrated deep thrower,
I
but he
think
just
he's a
doesn't
bit
do
of
it a
an
lot.
overrated
He
deep
just he
thrower.
just doesn't do it a lot.
Because
You
we have a
know,
guy in our group that's constantly posting about his deep pass accuracy, and I'm like, yo, he like I said, anytime you post a stat for your quarterback and Andy Dalton is also top 3 in that stat, like just
just
don't share
toss it
that.
out. Toss
Just
it
toss
out.
that one out, and it's a lot of those analytical kind of stats where does it come? It comes down to this simply: can he take the play action deep post route shot when it's there? Will he pull the trigger or will he pull it down? Because for a quarterback to be a dual threat, that big arm, big body, and moves that well, he probably should have had more than 15 passing touchdowns. It's not a wide receiver because there's only so much that a corner can do. He can't hold, he can't jam, you can't hit him in the head. And like it's the league has tailored itself to getting wide receivers open
Right.
deep crossing routes and things like that. Is like, are you throwing that route when it's called, or you're not calling it? Like did Brian Dable not call those kind of combination routes where you have like these deep over routes and maybe some go routes and then maybe some stuff underneath, or the play action deep shot after a turnover where they didn't get a lot of interceptions. So do you get the ball at the 50-yard line a lot, and then are you taking that shot? Because if Kansas City gets a fumble recovery at the 48-yard line, you can
Lights
almost
out.
guarantee they're gonna take a shot with someone. Miami's gonna take a shot with Tyreek Hill. Cincinnati's taking a shot. Josh Allen's taking a shot. Jalen Hurts is gonna take a shot with either Slim Reaper or AJ Brown. So even Tannehill off the play action is gonna take that shot. Like, is your offense advanced enough to take that shot? I think even Dallas should take one of those kind of shots, especially like if you get
Hmm.
that midfield turnover, or you're going to be methodical and give it to Saquon Barkley and let him get 2.5 yards in a cloud of dust and just so are you going to be able to switch it up? And I'm not sure. I think their defense and their run game, and like I think that the confidence that Brian Dable has in Daniel Jones will squeeze out a couple more victories, but I'm not quite sure that he gets the ball back down 24-20, 2 minutes 30 seconds left, no timeouts. Can you move your team down the field for
Right.
a touchdown?
Yeah. So I got them 9-8, sneaking into the wild card. Dallas, I was actually tempted to pick Dallas to win the division because I really like the Stephon Gilmore pickup, especially now that they're going to be re-signing Diggs, so that'd be a good mentor for him to kind of hopefully stop all his Asante Samueling.
Yo,
You
he
know,
gives up so many
I
yards.
know,
It's like
I know it.
1,500 yards.
Well, it's like I told you, it's like that was the difference between Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa. Like, Barry Bonds could get a home run, you're gonna walk him, he could get a single, he could get a double. Sammy Sosa was either home run or strikeout.
66 home runs,
Yeah,
177,000 strikeouts.
yeah, and that's
That's an exaggeration, folks. Calm down.
but I also like Brandon Cooks. I like the Brandon Cooks pickup because now he doesn't have to be a number one. You got him across from CD Lamb. You still got Michael Gallup. The one loss that I think could bite Dallas to some degree. It's not going to be an
Zeke.
over. No. Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
not that wasn't where I was going. I was going to say Dalton Schultz because I feel like him and Dak had a certain rapport, where he was Dak's get out of trouble card, when things broke down. It's
But he
not a
was like, but he was in that area where every tight end kind of functions.
what is I'm saying. It wasn't a big. It's not going to be a big loss as far as oh my Dallas's offense is in trouble. It's just Dak now has to find another safety valve, if you will.
Yeah, but like I said, Dalton Schultz kind of operated in that same space where most tight ends kind of operate. So you just get another guy, another pass
Well,
catching
they got
tight end in there,
Escobar as well, so maybe
and it'll just be right in that same spot.
you
It's
know,
like if we think about like a guy like Kittle or Hawkinson or Waller or
mm-hmm,
Kelsey, those guys were like one game. Waller, Derek Carr threw him the ball. He had 20 targets.
mm-hmm.
So if you losing him
Right, would
for
be a big impact.
was a
Yeah.
big impact. But Dalton Schultz is one of those guys that just kind of operated. He operates in that same area with like Fryermuth or like Hayden Hurst for Cincinnati, or even like Kyle Pitts. They want Kyle Pitts out, out in space and making these
Mm-hmm.
Kelsey Waller kind of plays. But he might be better suited being in that Dalton Schultz, 10 yards, bump off a linebacker, bump off a safety, and
We'll
doing like
see.
these nice little curl routes. But like as long as you can get a tight end that can catch in traffic or a tight end that can beat these linebacker matchups, I think you'll be able to replace him.
And we saw Tony Pollard with the injury in the playoffs.
Yes, so Tony probably got injured.
He's on the tag. They got Mike Davis, they got Rojo who's suspended, and then they just picked up Deuce Vaughn, who is all of 5'6" from Kansas State. So, and then they got the issues with the offensive line holdouts. Tyron
Better
Smith.
cut that check.
That's going to be a big. Now that'll be the big impact if that doesn't get resolved.
If Dallas doesn't resolve, because I like Dak Prescott, but letting Dak cook is probably not a great idea. He did put up a lot of numbers like his last couple of healthy seasons, something like 4,900 yards,
Well, I mean, he led the
averaging
league
like
in picks last
38
year.
touchdowns.
He led the league in
But
picks last year while
but if
missing
we
5 games.
but if we look at some of those things, man, he threw a lot of interceptions that hit his own Dallas teammates in their chests.
Hey,
I mean, listen, I can't do anything for you. Like if if I cook you food and put it in front of you, and then later you tell me you're hungry, I'm like, I put the food right in front of you. Oh, I didn't eat it. So there's a lot of those passes. Like, I mean, never
hey,
hit
people
guys
don't give
in
those
the hand.
excuses to people like to Josh Allen. You know what I mean? Like,
Because Josh Allen is 3rd and 2 and he's throwing deep bombs in the double coverage. That's a different story. Dak is throwing slant routes and hitting guys in the chest. And it's like, oh man.
Well,
And then
Brandon
it
Cook's
gets
going to
picked
take some of
off.
those slants to the house, unfortunately,
Brandon Cook seems to be like a hired mercenary. I'm not sure if
provided that he doesn't get
how much
knocked
he
out
has left.
again.
Oh my God, the Super Bowl when he got knocked
Yeah,
out, I would have
yeah.
retired.
Yeah, so I was tempted to pick Dallas. I think Dallas, like I said this like one of our very, 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 very early episodes. Like it's always fun to joke on the Cowboys about this is their year, this is the year, all that good stuff.
They
If
went
Dallas if
24 and
Dallas
10 the
can't
last 2 years.
if Dallas can't get out of the NFC this year, I don't know when it's going to happen.
But it's that's the thing. Like I saw
Like
because
Philly
every
is the
once in
only
a while,
team they should line up against and feel like they might be better than us or they are better than
But
us.
we always have these preseason. This is the only team worth worrying about. And then last year Minnesota went like 13-4. So, and the people are like, oh, they're not really a real 13-4 team. I'm like, listen, they went out there and they won 13
And what
games. Like,
happened in the playoffs?
yeah, they lost. Yeah, it happens.
To
But a
who?
lot of
Uh-huh.
everybody
Uh-huh.
except for the Chiefs lost in the playoffs last year. So 13 other teams lost
Not
playoff
everybody
games last
lost to
year.
Daniel Jones.
Listen,
At home.
that's neither here nor there. Some people lost because they didn't have long enough cleats. It happens. With Dallas and I want to say the knock, they went 24-10 the last 2 years with Mike
Mhm.
McCarthy, but yet they keep the conversation because I think I think we as the media, that's us now, they exhaust the Dallas conversation to the point where you just come up with just random stuff like what you sent me a couple weeks ago. What's Dallas toughest game of the
Yeah,
year
what's
is
the most
like,
important game of the season?
which is completely irrelevant as long as you win your division or you get the wild card. Like that's all that matters. So you can go 7-10, and if you win your division, that seventh game you won was the most important game.
I'm sure
Like
there's
that's all
somebody
that
out
matters.
there. I'm sure there's somebody out there saying if we didn't run into San Francisco the last 2 years.
But Philly ran into San Francisco, and they would have beat them with a healthy Brock Purdy
Oh
too.
yeah, easily. So
They would have.
Speaking of Philly, third all time in single season sacks last year as a team. They picked up TJ Edwards from Chicago, lost Jason Hargrave to the 49ers. So I expect their defense, they lost, a couple of corners, so that's going to be a different defense, even though I think overall they still have the majority of their core, Brandon Graham with 11 sacks. They added Jalen Carter, who doesn't have to come in right away and be a star per
They
se.
basically said, "Listen, Georgia, send us all of your relentless tacklers
I
and
mean,
prove us
why
different.
not?
We already got Eagles jerseys ready for them."
Why
I'm
not?
a Falcons fan, and every single year I'm like, "Why don't we have more Bulldogs in our draft class?" You're right down the block. I'm like, they are
Because
already
DJ
built like.
Shockley messed it up.
Listen, they still got DJ Shockley on the payroll. He's like the film analysis guy like he's like the film analysis social media marketing guy. So he's still on the payroll. We brought in Todd Gurley for a little bit, then he told him not to score against Detroit. He did it anyway. And I'm like, maybe that's why we don't have Georgia guys on the team. He's neither here nor there. Philly, like, granted, this is probably unlikely, but like I was going through their schedule and I'm like, they can't go 15-2.
No, no, they won't go
It just
15 to 2.
can't. It can't. But I'm like, I'm looking, and the only reason I put the two because it's like they're not gonna go 17-0.
Well, the secondary is like I think is a little more cause for concern than it was, And then my other issue is if something happens to DeAndre Swift, he's only missed, 5 games or so in his 3 years, so no big deal. But if he does go down, they're relying on Rashad Penny, who misses all the time. Like he's already missed 40 games in
They're
his
gonna just
career.
run the QB rugby scrum with a.
But, hey,
They'll
bring
just
out
put a tight end at quarterback,
bring
and
out the Nebraska baby.
they'll just bring out like some tight end and have him play quarterback so Jalen Hurts doesn't take too many unnecessary hits, and they'll just move the pile that way. I think Philly will be fine. I think their offensive line is always solid. I think
and
they like Philly for the last like I don't know. I'm just throwing arbitrary number like last 10 years just seem to always control the line of scrimmage
mhm.
from the time that I'm gonna say from the time that Vic was there because Vic was never a pocket passer in
Well, they
Atlanta. He
got
was
rid of
always
Philly's
outside the
fourth
pocket.
down play, right?
I don't think they
I
leverage
know they
that
were
out.
looking at it. I know they were looking at it.
I think it just I saw something they got rid of the the
It was like basically the
the little
push.
pop pass. The
Yeah,
pop pass they got rid of. Like you can't hand the ball off in front of you in like an RPO situation.
yeah.
That's something that I saw, but no one really talked about it, so I'm not sure how accurate it is or if someone's interpreting the rule incorrectly. But I mean, even with that, you can't you could just pull a guard and the guard can push Jalen.
Yeah,
He's just blocking. You just don't have the tight end do it. So
yeah,
I think they'll be fine.
yeah. So I
I,
ended up.
I think they have an identity, and that's the thing. Philly has an identity
Right.
that they can rely on all game long. They should have probably stuck to it in the Super Bowl. But I mean, they really did because they came right back down and scored a touchdown
I mean, they win
and
the
went for
Super Bowl
two.
if Jalen Hurts doesn't have the fumble.
Yeah. Uh, Well, I think, I mean, granted, it was late in the game. That punt return was huge.
Oh yeah,
Patrick,
definitely.
Patrick Mahomes had less than 200 yards
I don't know
passing.
how he got that punt return off on that field.
Oh, because they got longer cleats because the field manager is a lifelong Kansas City fan, and Lamar Hunt, the family foundation, was paying that guy's kids college tuition for last. Yeah, it's always something. I don't know. He just knew that, oh, everybody's over here, and I'm fast and I'm healthy for the first time all year. I'm just gonna run. He had a hell of a Super Bowl, Kadarius
He
Tony.
did.
But I think Philly's identity. I think we've had these conversations about running backs and running games and things of that nature, and we'll get into this with NFC South review as a fan of the Falcons. It's on this side now. Um, Being able to just control the line of scrimmage, if you can do it
Mhm.
on one side of the ball, that's gorgeous. But if you can do it on both sides, like Philly does, like that's why Philly, like they didn't score that many points, and Jalen Hurts' stats weren't crazy because they would score 24 points in the first half and go into halftime up 24-9, and then just shut down the opposing team's offense because now they got to throw. You got Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, um, Dean. Now you add Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis is getting to the fold more. So if they can follow that same formula of getting, two or three touchdowns in the first half and getting, 17, 20 points in the first half, and then maybe you get an early touchdown in the third quarter and you're up 27-10, and teams have to throw the ball. And then when Philly gets the ball back, even if they don't, even if they get one first down, because they run the ball so effectively, that could be 5 to 6 minutes off the clock.
Mhm.
One or two first downs, and then they break through and they hit you with that over the top pass to AJ Brown because you're sick. You're sick of the run. You got 8 men in the box, and you go man coverage, and so Philly just has their basic formula for how they're successful makes other teams have to adjust to them,
Right.
and
Yep.
they can just
So
keep running the ball, controlling the clock, and that's
yeah.
that's
So
why the 15-2. Like I said, I don't know if it will happen, but just looking at the schedule, it's like
well,
it's a possibility.
I got them 12-5. I got Dallas 11-6. I got the Giants 9-8, and then bringing up the rear from the nation's capital, but actually in Maryland, is the Commanders. I got them at 6-11, and I just don't know what to do with them. The defense is good. Relatively speaking, secondary issues, of course. Drafted Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State, even though he only weighs about a buck 35, soaking wet. But he's got a lot of pick sixes, for touchdowns in college. So I guess the idea is you got yourself a pit bull to go battle with the receivers and
And
you
he had a
know,
lot of tackles. He's a big
yeah,
tackler for a smaller guy. I think he was like
yeah.
165 or something like that. That's still pretty small.
But I'm scared because this is the NFL now. You know what I mean? You got a quarterback, that was a fifth round draft pick who I think is a little more talented than a fifth round draft pick. So maybe he's a fourth round draft pick. I don't know. But then you got Brian Robinson, who came back from getting shot last year. But he's
Many
your
men
yeah, but he's
with
your
death upon me.
he's your traditional 3 yards and a pound in a cloud of dust guy, whereas we still have Antonio Gibson on the roster, who I would like to think that someone like Eric Bieniemy can get the ball in space. And, this is one of those let me get the ball in the hands of my playmakers or get my people that are fast out in space. So maybe he pops off a few runs. He ran for over 1,000 as a rookie, and then he fell into the doghouse because he had Tiki Barber fumbleitis. Chase Young is fully back.
You gotta
You
hold it up
know,
here, man, like that.
yeah, Chase Young is fully back, even though there's been some talks about potential trades and all that stuff, but he's back. Picked up Cody Barton from Seattle. I do like that. 14th in tackles in the league. So, and then if you're going to have a young quarterback like that, why not bring in somebody like Jacoby Brissett? to shore up, mentor slash take over if necessary.
Yeah, but
So
Jacoby Brissett's not a winner, dog.
no, he's not.
Uh,
But
You
he's a
got
stop.
6 wins,
He's
6-11,
he's a stopgap. He's a stopgap in between.
3-14,
If you need if you
three and
need to go
14,
get
dog.
you
Just say it with me.
if you need to go get you a quarterback in the draft next year, Jacoby Brissett's a dude you could throw in there and not necessarily mess up your draft position. Ask the Cleveland Browns.
I mean, I like Jacoby Brissett. I feel like the defensive talent in division is guaranteeing 6 losses for
We're not going 0-6 in division.
you're going 0-6 in division.
Not going 0-6 in division.
0-6 in division. Simply because I don't know what your quarterback brings to the table. I know he had the win at the end of the year against
I don't know
Dallas.
what your quarterback brings to the table.
Exactly. But I know that the Falcons run the hell out of the ball. They were like number one, like top 3 in rushing, and they're like not a good offensive team, and still was in the top 3 in rushing in the league. I'm not sure that the Washington offense is in the top 10 or 15 and most of the major offensive categories, and that's the thing. You got a young quarterback, you have a solid defense with
Got some good
Allen and
receivers.
Washington and Chase Young, but they're talking
Payne.
about moving. Yeah, Payne, so you have like studs up front. The defensive backfield for Washington's always just fast and
Man.
physical. Always. It's always like
Your
that.
secondary is bad when you got a dude named Wild Goose back there.
But they're always fast. They're always flying around. It's just, is Ron Rivera the right guy for the helm? So that's
No.
gonna rear its ugly head. With Bieniemy being a head coaching candidate, I think that's gonna be the conversation. New ownership,
Mm-hmm.
and your owner is the most famous person associated with the team in Magic Johnson. He's just a partial owner.
Well,
So
my thought.
I think he's gonna draw so much attention. I think it's gonna be so much negative attention. Not not negative attention. Excuse me.
My thought has been Bieniemy doesn't leave Kansas City unless
Someone told me he's gonna be the head coach.
Rivera's going upstairs after this season, because he has been an ambassador for the franchise, and everybody's talking about how he improved the culture, even under Wild Dan was still there. So like maybe he goes upstairs on some Bruce Arians type move, and then Bieniemy takes
Yeah,
over
and
as the
that's what
head
I'm
coach.
saying. None of that translates to wins. When you have that much, like, keep on Daniel Snyder, the lawsuits, the emails, Gruden, all the tumultuous stuff that was going on behind the scenes. The team never was able to block it out and just win.
Right.
Dallas always has Jerry Jones issues. He was upset with players dealing, but he came out and took a knee before the national anthem. There's always like this Hollywood kind of spotlight on Dallas, but
Mm-hmm.
on the field in the regular season, Dallas always performs. Washington, these clouds that have loomed over the team have never gone away,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think they have the personnel or the personalities to make it go away. I think what
Right.
they have is more conflict, because Magic Johnson with a microphone in his face, that could be your team's worst nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
You seen him when he stepped down for the Lakers in game 81 of LeBron's first year, just at a press conference. Is like that. Someone commanding that kind of attention, commanding that kind of attention in a team that's constantly just immense and turmoil
Mm-hmm.
with a lack of talent. Because if you look at the wide receiver core is good. Scary Terry, Samuel, like those
Jahan Dotson.
those guys are good. If the
Mm-hmm.
quarterback can't get them the ball, then I'm out here just running for nothing. Wide receivers are getting 28, 26, 28, $30 million contract extensions, contract free agency, trading 5 players for them. These guys will look around like, listen, I can't waste a whole year with this rookie trying to figure it out. And then you're gonna get mollywopped a couple times in division. Well, six
The,
times.
the NFC East never goes according to plan.
It doesn't, but rookie quarterbacks normally play like rookie quarterbacks. Brock Purdy was an anomaly.
Hmm.
Most of these guys are anomalies, but it's like young quarterbacks tend to play the way young quarterbacks because they don't see the field. They talk about it like, oh, my second full year, Trevor Lawrence was
Hmm.
number one high school player from the top, number one player in the country at his position, probably definitely in the state, me even in the country from like eighth grade all the way through Clemson, a couple national championship trips, beat Alabama, gets to Jacksonville, has a terrible coach, bad year, gets Doug Peterson, slowly starts to figure it out, has a big comeback in the playoffs. But he was the prototypical blue chip top flight quarterback. So he was already talented enough to get over that hump. Some of these guys, we'll talk about the Ritters and Purdy's and Kirk Cousins, and some of these guys take time. Josh Allen, another one of those guys that just it may take 32 games, and then game 30, or now at this point 34 games, and then game 35, you're like, oh, he's figured it out now,
Hmm.
and that's kind of tough with Washington with the new ownership, and they want to clean house and clean the stink off from Daniel Snyder. And Ron Rivera's, as a coach, I don't know what the talent level has been in Washington or how people felt about it. I don't know if you as a fan felt like, oh, we got a playoff caliber
No,
team at any point in the last few
so
years.
just to make it simple and quick, you talked about Philly having an identity. Washington's identity was we got all the skill positions, but we ain't got an offensive line to save our lives. So you never
That
could,
has to be coaching though. Like,
like they have never like in the last I would say 8 to 12 years. You know,
is that a skill? What is that? Are the offensive linemen? Is Kansas City's offensive line that much better than Cleveland's, or is Kansas City's scheme conducive to
I think it's
what
the
their offensive
scheme.
line can provide?
I think it's the scheme. Because like with Washington, like they had Trent Williams for a long time. But it was Trent Williams and then some other dudes. You know what I mean? And over time, you had Bo Scherf and everything. Like so, over time, like you got better linemen, but then, like unfortunately, over the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a lot of offensive line injuries. So like Washington just hasn't been able to control the line of scrimmage in that way that you brought up Philly.
Yeah,
Defensive line is there. The defensive line is there.
yeah. Defensive line
Decent
stout.
linebackers. The linebackers are pretty good. Secondary, we mentioned awful. So I said the Giants were last in interceptions. Washington was 28th. So like I think Washington, and I went through this as a Florida State fan, like with Bobby Bowden's last couple of years. You had all the receivers that could catch jump balls. You had the quarterbacks that could throw the ball out the stadium, but it didn't matter if he only had a half a second to throw the ball.
Yeah, somebody's coming
To
right up the
yeah,
A gap.
yeah. This has been going on since Jason Campbell. Because I think Jason Campbell was a better quarterback than we remember. He just never really had the chance to live. Like,
Just let Logan
can
Thomas
I
be the
live?
quarterback. Shut up, Virginia Tech.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like just like Andrew Luck, he just couldn't live. Like, by the time he stepped back, somebody
Andrew
was in
Luck
his
said, "I'm
chest.
sick of rehab." He was
You
like, "Man,
know,
I'm
Andrew
sick of rehab."
Andrew Luck ran on the track like that, and then said it. Then he ended up with the helmet in his chest, and now we got Jonathan Taylor trying to work his way out of Indianapolis. Like, I don't know what's going on there, but I know if Ursay dies tonight and Jonathan Taylor is not in the league tomorrow, the league will go on.
It just, I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. She was telling me she's from Maryland and Jersey. She was getting hired at a corporation, like a national corporation. So she was using her leverage and her negotiation with this company. Like, listen, you want me to move from Maryland to Jersey? then this is what I need. Living in Maryland, you pay me this much, and this percentage is conducive to life in Maryland. But if you want me to move to Jersey, then you have to up my pay to make it match what I'm getting here. I'm
Right.
not just going to move because you guys want me there. If you want me there, then you need to make it work for me.
Right.
And everyone was like, "Oh, you're playing hardball." She was like, What's the difference between 5% and 8%?" She was like, "You're asking me, but this major corporation that we work for, they're arguing against me for my 3%. I want my 3%. So who's at fault? The multi-billion-dollar corporation, or me using my leverage? Because it's like it's only a few times in your career where you have this leverage." She was like, "The fact that they keep calling me is proof that they don't have anyone that's ready to take this job other than me.
Right.
So if you want me to take this job, then you need to pay me." So she said the contract came back, all of her numbers, she laid it all out. They gave her all her numbers. She's like, "So I moved to Jersey." I'm like, "That's pretty dope." Using her leverage when it was conducive to her. Jonathan Taylor's trying to use it, but he unfortunately is in a situation where his position isn't also doing it. Like he needed, if for him to make this power move, he needed Eckler, Mixon, Saquon, and himself to be in contract negotiations, and then Dalvin Cook, who's essentially a free agent after being released by Minnesota, to also be on board with, we're not taking it. Not necessarily guys holding out on their contracts, but just guys who are like really using their leverage to ensure that the price of the brick goes up. Because with the running back position, the price of the brick has gone down. And then the expectation just as high because now it's such a passing league. You got to pass block more. You got to catch more passes. Like Saquon has a 65 catch
But see,
milestone, and
That's
it's
Jonathan Taylor's problem is that he's more of that traditional running back than he is the modern day running back.
but he also catches a lot of catches out of the backfield. He has gotten three different quarterbacks,
Mm-hmm.
couple of different head coaches. They have a new head coach that just came in. They have a rookie quarterback. So when you have a rookie quarterback, more likely you're going to give the ball to the running back so many times, and he knows he's going to get 250 touches this year. And then at the end of the year, when their record is 6-11 or 5-12, and everyone's fawning over the rookie quarterback who did the best he could in the circumstances, and the rookie head coach did the best he could in the circumstances, and Jonathan Taylor's at the table trying to negotiate, and I'm like, well, we did go 5-12. Like Saquon has a playoff clause in his contract. It's like his play, yes, as a 53-man roster with the practice squad and all the coaches, everybody has a role to play in the playoffs.
And even then, his incentives still aren't a million.
It's not even a total $1 million. It's like, why is my, because you could go 9-8 and Dallas can go 9-8 and win the tiebreaker. He's like,
Right.
I hit 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, all this other stuff. But it's like we lost the tiebreaker because I missed the game. So now that impacts my money. So I think Jonathan Taylor's trying to like exercise that leverage. I'm not sure if everything needs to be done publicly. Like, because I'm pretty sure my friend, she didn't post her negotiations on Facebook or
Should he
Instagram.
had made this request 2 weeks ago?
I don't think the trade. I think what he should have probably done is gotten in a room and gotten a deal done early. Just sit down, owner, player, GM. Let's get this deal done early. I want to be here because if you look at like I'm only getting 5 years out of a running back. He's going to his third year,
Fourth, I believe.
fourth year.
But yeah.
So get him a 2-year deal. 2 years, 25 million, 12 and a half each. You get him in, you save the locker room because we're gonna see there's gonna be a few teams where when it gets tough in October and they've played about 6 or 7 games, Baltimore, it's gonna be tough the way they treated Lamar. The Chargers quickly giving 265 to or 262 to Justin Herbert and barely want to give Eckler anything. If they are If they're not performing up the par, that's gonna be tough. Josh Allen this year, his extension money starts to kick in. He starts getting paid that money. There's gonna be a lot of teams where the Giants, another team where you played hardball and you tore some fabric in the locker room. And
Mm-hmm.
winning is a great band-aid.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not winning, you might as well go ahead and get gangrene in that cut because it's gonna rear its ugly head. Like, what's the boy name? Was not Zay Flowers. Who's the guy that was already there in Baltimore who went to Twitter when they were talking when the GM said was it Bateman?
Was it Bateman? Rashad Bateman?
Ba- Bateman,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So when the GM said we don't have the wide receivers, yada yada yada, he immediately went to Twitter or X or whatever it's called now and deleted it.
He's
But
like,
you
yo,
know,
that's your
it's just,
job.
yeah, it's your job to get the. And this is before they signed Lamar. So you mean to tell me Rashad Bateman's going to be over that?
Right.
Because what if he goes into the game, he only gets 2 targets?
Right.
Who's he mad at? Is he mad at Lamar? Is he mad at the new offensive coordinator? Is he going to have a gripe with the GM? Is he going to want to get out of
Is he
town?
gonna be mad at Odell?
Is Odell taking him too many shots? Is his hamstring going to be tight?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to
Soft
get this check
tissue.
and get it? Do I need to get this checked out? I need to get an MRI. I need a massage. I need this. I need the recovery little pants. So I think a lot of these owners, I get that you want to be the big fish and you want to be the boss when it comes to negotiating. Jerry Jones, it kind of backfired because they felt like he gave away a lot of his leverage. But Dallas has had some good years.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Garrett had a couple of average years, but Dallas has some good years. Granted, the attendance is good. They have some good players. They've had double digit wins, playoff bursts. If it wasn't for an Aaron Rodgers rolling to the left, just outstanding pass to that tight end, they probably would have won that game. So it was like,
And don't forget, what's Skip Bayless call him? Mason Crossbar.
yeah. So I mean, like, it just these things happen. So I think as an owner, instead of looking at your players like, oh, these guys just want money from you, I'm like, you just want money from your negotiations. So if you're negotiating with the city of Dallas about getting a stadium built, you're not going to just immediately want to give up 1.1 billion and ask them for 400 million. You're like, oh, I want a 1.5 billion dollar stadium. Can y'all give me 1.5 billion dollars? That's where you would start, and you would say,
Right.
oh, this is how much money that the team's going to generate. And they were like, well, give us 500 million, and we'll give you the 1 billion bet, whatever the case may be. But you're not going to go into a negotiation where you just give up all your leverage. So why would you expect your players to do that?
Right.
So I think it would behoove the owners to just really sit down, like, listen, I'm gonna give you more than this guy. I'm gonna guarantee it. And then I want you to be a leader in the locker room. I want you to show, because that leadership can galvanize players. But this tearing at these fabrics is tough because everyone's not going to get paid. Tackles are going to get paid. Defensive ends are going to get paid. Wide receivers are going to get paid.
Corner.
Safeties, corner safety, they're starting to get their money a little bit more, but not as much because now they're starting to kind of the the development of corners is starting to catch up to the development of quarterbacks and wide receivers. But these 7-on-7 camps and drills, you're getting a lot more NFL ready corners because the college game is going to more pro style. So they're starting to see
Mm-hmm.
more cover three schemes versus like the crazy stuff we should see in NCAA where it's just like five dudes in the middle of the zone and it's like everybody's wide open
Yeah.
because there's no spread. So now got a lot more pro style coaches going to the NFL, a lot of former players coaching college teams. So you're getting more NFL ready corners and then they're getting their money, on time or early in certain cases. So just a matter of the owners just have to just take in the back seat. Like, listen, most of these guys, the team isn't even like their biggest thing. Like the team is something they bought with money they earned from something else.
Mm-hmm.
Either money they earned from owning another team or money they own from real estate or hedge fund
Tech,
management,
oil.
tech, oil, like something else. Was like, yeah, you own the 49ers, but you also own, miracle.com and you got evaluated like $4 billion off of that. So it was like, why you penny pinching the football team that's generating money? Those $16 beers and $14 hot dogs and $12 garlic burgers, like, yeah, you getting all that money too. So it's like,
That's why I always struggle unrelated. That's why I always struggle with Mark Cuban because I'm like Dirk really changed the way we look at him, because he wasn't willing to pay Steve Nash. After they won the championship, he broke it all apart. So it's like that one year and what Dirk went through and who he beat on the way to the finals and in the finals shapes the whole narrative of how we look at Mark Cuban as an owner.
yeah, but Mark Cuban says something pretty profound when I saw him on when Bill Simmons had a TV show on HBO, and it was Mark Cuban. He was this guy named Malcolm Glazer, who's like a economist, but he does a lot of
Hmm.
sports economists, and then Bill Simmons. And this was a few years ago after the Clippers sold for $2 billion. And Malcolm Glazer asked Mark Cuban, he was like, "Would you sell the Mavericks for $3 billion?" He was like, "What am I going to do with another $3 billion?" He's like, "I already have $3 billion." He was like, "I have the team because I like having the team. I like being the owner of the team, and I like what he does." I think he just was smart. Like, he just didn't want to pay, everybody, because you won a championship. A lot of guys think they should be overpaid because that's the ultimate goal. But it's like, cool, yeah, you won a championship, but you still only averaged 12 points all year. I'm not going to pay you like you averaged 21 points because we won a championship. You averaged 12 points,
Ooh, Mr.
three
Logical
assists.
with the shots at Bruce Brown.
I mean, like somebody will give Max Struess $50 million.
Yeah,
Somebody's going to give
60.
Gabe
He got
60 million.
64.
Then you got Gabe Vincent in LA. He getting 11 million a year, and it's like, you see what happened when guys go play. I mean, LeBron's been better off the ball, but it's like, you made it this far. You're gonna get your money. Um, so with these owners, they just gotta really just like, listen, what's better for my team,
Hmm.
not the cap. What's better for my team? We saw Golden State. Granted, basketball is a different sport, but money is money. We watched them pay to keep pay for Kevin Durant, pay to keep their core in place after Kevin Durant left, and it got them three championships after they started paying people, because they got the original one and they were making like regular
Hmm.
NBA star money, nothing crazy. Then they lose in the finals. They bring in KD. They have him for 3 years. Clay gets hurt. They don't go like, you know what? Uh, uh, pay Clay. And even Brooklyn was like, cool, Kevin Durant's hurt, pay Kevin Durant. And if they could have kept the continuity together, Brooklyn still would be a favorite right now if they would have still had Spencer Dinwiddie, Caris. If they never made the James Harden trade,
Yeah.
they would be top three in the East. They would have been top three in the East that year, last year, this upcoming year. Like, they would be competing with Milwaukee. They'd
In
be ahead of the
Boston.
Knicks and Boston every year with just Kyrie, KD, because you would have gotten. You probably could have made a move and got another big man, but that's what Golden State did. Golden State kept it together, and they got Wiggins. They made the
Yep.
deal for
And
Wiggins.
now James, you know what spells loser when you trying to go to the Clippers on purpose. You know,
Like,
and I'm tired of
unless
people saying that Harden's better than D Wade.
not even close.
I'm
Not even
tired of it.
close. Not even close. Like, it's not even close. I like James Harden, and prime James Harden was very entertaining. But even then, you didn't think he was better than anybody else. Even the year he won MVP, you wouldn't have taken James Harden over any of the other top six players in the league.
Right.
Like, James Harden, would you wouldn't have taken him over Steph. You wouldn't have taken him over LeBron. You wouldn't have taken him over KD. You wouldn't have taken him over. Well, it was like,
Maybe Giannis back then, but
maybe.
maybe not.
So, because he didn't play any defense.
Right.
He was notorious not playing any defense, and now he's literally just running from the best team. Well, granted, Houston wasn't a great team, but he talked his way out of Houston, goes to Brooklyn with a former MVP and two guys who won NBA championships, who were basically mercenaries with their skill set. Like what Kyrie and what KD bring to a basketball team, and you're James Harden, you add that, you're like, oh, we about to get 6 dudes from Rucker Park, and we about to win 50 games
Yeah.
in the NBA. And it's like you can't stay healthy. Like
And now he
you
running from the
can't stay healthy.
MVP.
Now you're like, oh, I got a teammate just won MVP. I want to leave. Where are you going? Like if you want to be in LA that bad, then okay, more power to you. I'm not. I'm not going to tell you. You know, you're a grown man. You go where you want to go. I'm just thinking logistically. It's like if you're trying to go to LA, look at the Carmelo Denver New York trade. I don't know why people don't look at history. It's like, listen, that trade crippled the Knicks, and it didn't really do much for Denver either.
Right.
I mean, granted, you know, as the butterfly effect, they end up getting Murray and Jokic and everything else and Malone, and it worked out. But that initial trade, sending those guys from New York to Denver, didn't do much for either franchise.
Right.
It made Carmelo happy, ish. He got to go to New York. It made the NBA happy because they needed a star in New York that they can put on Christmas Day, and he can put up. What he has 62 points, 0 assists, 0 rebounds, 0 steals.
Yep.
So, like, you can have those kind of moments because it's Carmelo. But as far as a basketball move, he was better off just playing the season out in Denver and then sign as a free agent in New York next year, starting off fresh. Because it's not like they were going to trade all these players and he was going to, like, run them through the playoffs.
Right.
You still had LeBron in the East back then. So it was like, I need all hands on deck. Be like, no, I'm going to send 8 of these hands to Denver with some draft picks and then hope I can beat D Wade. And yeah, so
it is what it is.
If I was an agent, I'd be fired.
Yeah, I would never get to anywhere because I would just tell the truth, and people don't like the truth in business. I've learned that.
People, yeah, definitely. Yeah, people don't like the truth in sports. They don't like it.
You want to, what is it? You want a pretty lie or the ugly truth?
When you're pissing your pocket to tell you it's raining, I can't do it. I will not do it.
That's what they love in America. We love you. Thanks for the support. Like, review, subscribe. It's free. We will be back in a few days, probably talking about the NFC South. Zach, I know Mr. Logical want to get his Falcon thing off. He want to tell us about how the Falcons are about to go 11-6.
I got some thoughts. I'm saying that's all I got. I got some thoughts.
He got some thoughts. You know what I'm saying? But Sports Reports is ordered. Once again, he is Mr. Logical. I am 25, and we are out. Peace.